All right, welcome to another segment of Back in the Game, Bouncing Back from Tragedy, group therapy, Heal from the Inside Out. My name is Timothy Law Sr., and I'm here with...
Anthony Foster.
TJ Smith. Maurice Hodges.
So, guys, thank you guys for coming out today and sharing some things with us. I want to talk about this segment here, going to be talking about man cave. I know every person in their home, sometimes we have a man cave, and we just go into our little secluded place and get to ourselves. Subtitle, I Am My Brother's Keeper. Now, I want to read a biblical scripture, man, come from the book of 1 Samuel, the 22nd chapter, and it talks about when David had some men who were in a cave with him. And these men, this is what the scripture reads, 1 Samuel 22nd chapter, verses 1 and 2. The second, it says, David therefore departed thence and escaped to a cave, Adullam. And when his brethren and all his fathers heard it, they went down thither to him. And everyone, now these were the three type of men that was in this cave. Everyone that was in distress, everyone that was in debt, and everyone that was discontented, gathered themselves unto him, and he became a captain over them, and they were with him about 400 men. So you got about 400 men in a cave. They distressed, they discontent, and they in debt. So I want to also talk about, in the chapter right here, it deals with chapter number 7, talking about playing under pressure. So each one of us has went through a very tragic situation. You know, 3 of us have lost our son, transition, and TJ, you know, you lost your brother. So let's talk about, as a man, in society, they don't want men to grieve. You know, we can't have a weak moment. You know, we got to always be strong, you know, for our families. And so let's talk about how difficult it is for a man, TJ, every single day having to play under pressure to perform for your family and others after you went through a tragic situation.
It was difficult because, like I said, I had to be strong for my mother, my sister, even my stepfather, who lost his son. That was his son that was killed, and it was difficult because I was still having to juggle that, and also I was in relationships with women or a woman, and no one really checked on me through the process because I was having to try to be there for everyone else. And I think at some point I got to a point, I don't think anybody's holding my ladder. You know, I think I'm trying to hold everyone else's, but I don't have anyone that could stand there and say, you know, hey, it's going to be fine, because, you know, like you said, we're taught to be strong and to hold it together. And I couldn't find another man to go to talk about just some relief, because, you know, we just don't go to other men and just say, you know, hey, I'm struggling with X, Y, and Z. You know, we internalize it. We go to our room, we drive in the car, we go have food, and we just sit there and we think about all the things that are going on at that moment. And then, you know, I found myself out doing things that I wouldn't normally do. I can remember one week, me and my friends, and we went out for an entire week. We went out drinking, going to Mexican restaurants, and just having fun. But at the time that I was going through that, I don't think anybody knew what I was dealing with, because I just didn't want to open up to share. And then once I finally did share, I think it felt like a weight of the world just like lifted off of you, because you actually had to understand. And most recently, me and my wife were talking about something. We had went to a counseling session because I was shut down around different times or different times of the year, which my brother's birthday is December 30th. So the whole month of November, which is Thanksgiving, you got Christmas, birthday, and then the burial. November to about February, I'm just emotionally unavailable to whoever, no matter who it is. I'm emotionally unavailable. And so now I have kids, and I have her, and then she's not knowing what I'm having to deal with. Even if it's been 10 years, I learned throughout a long time ago to suppress those feelings. When I was a young kid, with my biological father not being there, so I suppressed that feeling. Then this come along, then I suppressed it, and then when anything else happens, I suppress it and go into my little corner. And it wasn't until I think you and I went to New York with the job that we had. We went to New York, and we were just able to just sit and talk just about things. And I felt finally somebody actually get that feeling. And so it's good to have other people and people to just bounce it off of. When you're having a bad day, I think I told somebody, I said, in 10 years, they'll say, how you doing? I said, I never had a bad day. And people don't understand that phrase, because the stuff that I hear people dealing with, just dealing with, that's small compared to losing a child or me losing a brother. That's like you worried about if it's gonna rain or not, whether you walk and get these shoes dirty or whether you do this, and you now know that there are people who really want to talk about the issues that you have.
Okay, so Maurice, I know you Maurice a baller. He hoop, and we talked about earlier, in our segments that sometimes it's difficult for us as athletes to transition, and learn how to be weak. So sometimes even in playing sports, you might have maybe injured, but you might be hurt, but you might still have to be able to perform in the game. So I want to talk about leading while bleeding. You are an entrepreneur. You have your own barbershop and doing some great things. But even though you have your shop, you went through the transition of your son, but you still having to lead, but you bleeding inside. Now, most barbers are very intellectual people, and they meet so many different people. And I can promise you, when those guys are sitting in that chair and they going through some situations at home and they asking reason, y'all conversing back and forth with them, and you spend knowledge to them, and man, I really need to hear that word. But think about Maurice is ministering to everybody else. He's leading, but he's bleeding inside. How difficult was it? Unfortunately, it was a tragedy, and now you are still having to lead at home in your business, but you're still bleeding inside.
It's a shock. I mean, what a shock, what a transition, because with my son, he was never sick. Yeah. So it was just here today, gone tomorrow. As far as the bleeding part of it, while still being a leader, that's mine. I'm sorry about that. For me, I went back to work probably like a week after. Yeah. So that really was my therapy. And I've always had basketball, but the biggest part of what helped me was I did have someone to talk to. Yeah. I've always had my dad, and it probably was tougher for him than it was for me. And we kind of helped each other through it, and we still are. Yeah. Like, we have moments where we really can't. We don't say much. It just, we know. But while leading, while still bleeding, that's every day. Yeah. It just, yeah. I take my moments. When it comes, I let it come. I tell my friends when they tell me they're going through something, I tell them, cry, take another step. Yeah. I'm not with that. I've never been one to suppress, because I've always had a big family, and they've always had my back. I've always been special in my family. My cousin is special. My grandmother is special. Everybody in my family, I feel like we've always treated each other like that person is special. So when I went through this, I wasn't alone. I've never been alone. No steps at all. I've always had them to have my back. And it's tough. Believe you me, last night, I cried last night. It just hits you. Yeah. And it's tough to deal with, but for the most part, my dad's been the strongest thing. He's been amazing. He really has. We talk, we have long talks, and we just talk. It ain't, most of the time it's not even about my son. It's just, we talk more, we're closer. He stepped up to a point to where he doesn't even have to say, I'm stepping up because I know you need me. He's just there. He's just always been there, and it's even stronger now, and it's wonderful to me. But you know, that loss, that being that guy in the barbershop, my guys, they stepped up. Yeah. They've had my back. Like, they've done some things for me. You know, it was really a shock to see them do it. I always knew they were there, but they showed me. They asked me how I'm doing. It's been beautiful. It was a tragedy, but at the same time, it's brought out some beautiful qualities and some guys that I really just didn't know they had. So as far as I go, it's tough, but I know God. I've always known God. So, and God is love to me. He always has been love, and I've never doubted that. I think I read a lot of Job when it first happened. I think that's what it is, and that got me through a lot of things. But I try to get stronger in the Bible and read more. But you know, when you get busy, you kind of put it to the side. But that Bible and my dad, that gets me a long way. I have my pastor also in my church, so I've always had somebody.
So it's good, as you're saying, having a good support system, you know, having people around you that TJ said, who's holding your ladder. When your ladder is leaning a little bit, and you got some people, man, who can help hold your ladder for you. And a lot of times, you know, this segment called Man Cave, you know, sometimes, and I read that scripture because these men that David was leading was men who didn't look like they was going to amount to anything. But at the end of that story, they came out to be great warriors. You know, so I think that we are always stronger after tragedy, you know, and there's some qualities in us that we don't know that we have, but when we come through it, you know, we can look back and be able to testify about how God brought us through this, and, you know, how he lead us to a new place. And so Anthony, talk about, you know, I'm talking about the cave, man. I'm talking about how sometimes for men, be honest, man, you get in a secluded place, and you know, sometimes you don't want, you know, you put some boundaries around you, and you're not going to let people really into your space, you know. So talk about, you know, your situation. Did you ever feel like you went into a cave? And this is the thing about being in a cave. You can be in a cave. You might not be in a cave physically, but you can be in one psychologically, you know. And I'm talking about outwardly, I could be like, oh, I'm cool. But like you said, you was talking about from home to work, man, you have the breakdown, you know. But the greatest thing that I've learned, and as Reese talking about, never holding anything in. When you can be honest and just real, that's liberation. It ain't easy to do because in the culture, we don't, man, you don't show that, you know. You cram it up, you know, be tough, be hard, be strong, don't show emotions, you know. Playing a sport, you hurt your elbow, get back out there, shake it up, you know. So we've been conditioned, man, to be tough. We're competitors. We hate to lose. You know, we're going to keep on playing until we win. We're going to play till you can't see the ball outside, you know what I'm saying, because we want to win. But when it comes to something spiritual sometimes, that's when it's in God's hand, and he has to, as that's one scripture says, that the Lord is my shepherd, meaning that he leads us, I shall not want. He maketh me lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still water. So talk about being in the cave and what do we got to do to come out of it?
All right. For me, being in the cave, and I would say I went physically and mentally. Physically into the cave, I just threw myself into work. We had a restaurant, and that was my cave. I would get up in the morning to 6 o'clock, go to that restaurant, and I would leave that restaurant at 10 o'clock at night. That was my cave. Family worked there with the family restaurant, so I would see them, but you know, I'm away from everybody. I can be vulnerable when they're not there until 10 o'clock in the morning. 10 o'clock, switch it. You see Perfect Anthony, or my nickname is Amp. You see Amp that's just you know, he's just vibrant. Everything's going great. He has no problem. He's strong. Never had a bad moment. Not just say day, never had a bad moment. From 10 o'clock to about 7:30, you got a different person. Everybody leaves. It's like fade to black. Fades to black. So that was my physical cave. Also, I didn't talk much, even though I was at work. You know, I was, you know, like I say, I was just, you know, I'm in customer service, so I've got to, you know, be very vibrant. But other than that, didn't talk much. Didn't talk much at home. I know that I didn't give the communication that was needed to my wife and kids. Because I was like, you know, I'm nice to everybody. I'm doing this. We're paying the bills. Nobody's wanting for anything, even though we went through this tragedy. So everybody should be good. But it's something that, as a man, you know, again, culture says, and especially our culture, you're weak if you cry. If you're vulnerable, something's wrong with you. You're not a real man. The thing, real man. You're not a real man because you're moping around. But guess what? I lost a son. But society says that's not a reason to cry. It's not a reason to feel a certain, you know, be in my feelings. One thing that I noticed with Maurice, he had, you know, his dad was around and all that. I met my dad one time and I've seen him 4 times. So I had uncles, you know, and they stepped in, but I never had that dad that could, you know, was my support system. So everything that I knew from growing up in my hood or the street. And again, that stereotype, strong, silent, and you perform. Gladiator type, okay? So that was my physical cave. Mental cave, again, I just, you know, I kind of was shut down. My wife is very, she's quiet. She's more of an introvert. I'm not extrovert, but she would always want to talk about our son. And I get the laptop, I would kind of, you know, get in my area. We had a den. I would go to the computer area. In our den, we had 2 couches. I would sit over here. Everybody else is over there. You know, I'd isolate myself. And that was bad mentally. And I think to this day, I still have to really listen a whole lot, because you can put yourself in a mental cave by not listening and seeing the signs that somebody else is still hurting, because I tried to, I think, mentally make it about me as well. It's still a hard thing to deal with, because again, like I said, not having a father, had a family. Family loves everybody, but we're not the, hey, how you doing, family? We're not the lovey-dovey family. Yeah. My wife was brought up in that more so. So that's been a challenge for me. So, you know, I've said it before. I've said it a few times earlier. You know, I had to, and I still look at, you know, had to see the truth, and just letting it all, you know, trying to be transparent now. It's a process for me, because my personality type is not, I'm not the nurturer personality. I'm the results driven, you know, personality person. I want it now, let's go with it. Not, well, you got your time to grieve or whatever. I'm about, you know, even with me, I went to the mirror. All right, back to work. It's all business. Can't cry. You can't do this. But on the way home at night, I was crying like a baby. Crying so hard one night, I thought I was gonna run off the road because I couldn't see, you know. And I just, you know, continuously pray every day right now to be better, but also to be able, if somebody's going through something, and there's a lot of people these days, you know, one of the ladies said the fact of, you know, you expect to bury your parents, but you never expect to bury your child. And right now that's real prevalent. There's a lot of, in our city, a lot of children are dying. And it's a lot of parents that don't know what to do because it's all new to them. You know, as a culture, we dealt with going to funerals from probably the time we're young, 2-3 years old. We go to funerals. Other cultures, when I was managing one restaurant in town, this girl was 27 years old, never went to a funeral, never had death in the family. You know, so I just think that you've got to, you know, pull yourself up out of that thing. Try to find some support. Didn't have anybody at the time who had went through anything like this. So, you know, it's like a unicorn. I'm like, what do I do? I started reading, trying to read books, couldn't find anything. All I could do was turn to God. You know, God, lead me through this. Help me be strong for the family. And that's pretty much, you know, my perspective on it.
I remember not necessarily that moment when I transitioned, but I remember shortly after everything happened, there was this family I was dating, and there was this family that took me in and knew everything that I was dealing with at a certain point in time. And so during that time, I had that moment where I was okay around them. And then at a certain point in time, I never was okay alone. And I would always say, you know, just get me through this day. Just get me through this moment. And then found out, and I would sit there, and like you said, her daughter was very active in sports, and I love sports. My brother played basketball, really good. It was hard for me to go sit in the gym and watch kids or people play basketball, and knowing that what I was dealing with internally. For the longest, even though I had to go to Walmart, there were days I wouldn't even go down Skyland to go to Walmart from where I live because I didn't want to pass by the graveyard. And so people never knew that type of stuff was going on. But then all of a sudden there was a switch, and that switch became, oh, now I can go to the graveyard because now I can go there and I can talk to him. And that's my peace. But nobody ever knew, you know, like what you deal with internally where you can't go and do X, Y, and Z, and somebody will bring up something and it brings back that memory.
Trigger.
It's a trigger point. And it could be a trigger to, you know, somebody, you know, like you would probably see, you know, like there's a food that they love to eat. Or there's something that, you know, a game that TJ would like, you know, there would be something that you would see. And mine was a trigger was going to a basketball jam. And so it's crazy how, you know, that light bulb goes off and then it changes again. And then now that place that you couldn't go now becomes your peace. where it was that dark cave, and then now it's now a peace, and you just go to it where it's a refuge for help.
I had a friend who texted me yesterday. His sister, he just lost his sister to cancer, and he said a couple of days before they lost her, she was in so much pain, and then the family prayed for her. They prayed for comfort, just comfort, and she passed like a day or two later. So I told him, you know, he always comes through. It may not be how you want it, but it's always going to be, he's always going to answer you, you know, in some way, shape, or form. He's always going to answer you, and it's always going to be glorious. He's going to get the glory. And my whole advice to him was, when you grieve how you want to grieve. You don't grieve how someone suggests you should grieve. You should not be, even for people who go to the club. Nobody can tell you can't be at the club now because your sister just passed. You could be trying to clear your mind from that. That pain could be tearing you up inside, and this could be the only thing at this point in time that you feel like you could be doing. So what's good for you is not good for someone else. You know what I'm saying? And like I told you, I tell people, like what you said, I don't hold it. It doesn't do holding it in is, man, it will tear you up inside. It will tear you up to the point where you can't take a step. So my thing was, man, listen, you need me, I'm here anytime. Time of the day you need to talk, I sit and hold the phone if you just want to cry to somebody. But just let it go. Try to take another step tomorrow. Let tomorrow come, take another step.
So that person who's out there, that father or that brother, that sister, that sibling who's dealing with, who just walked to transition, but they still have the mask on right now. How you doing? I'm blessed, I'm faith, I'm good, you know. But deep down inside, you want to be real, and you want to you crying like, man, I'm reaching out, you know. I need somebody to help me. What would you say to that person?
Just like Maurice said, if it's going to come out. It's just a matter of time before it comes out. You have to find that inner peace. And that inner peace is where you get to know who you are. Because, you know, everybody has said, you know, you're going to grieve differently. But at the same time, it's new to you. Grieving for your grandmother is not the same as grieving for a sibling. It's not the same, you know, I can't speak of grieving, you know, of a child, but my mom can. But I understand enough to know now, after walking through it, that it's going to be him, and then everything else is when you deal with, you know, your internal self, to sit down and say, yeah, I can be vulnerable to whatever it is. Yeah, it's okay for me to cry. If I want to go in my home and just shut the windows and shut the blinds, and I just want to just sit there, no TV, no music, it's fine. But you have to be real with yourself to know, as soon as you open those blinds, depending on the time of day it is, it's going to be sun or it's going to be night. Yeah. But you're blocking out that mental side of it. At some point, you're going to have to open the blinds.
Yes.
And whomever that person is that passed, you find within whatever they were doing that was good, the good moments, and you ask yourself one question: would they want me to just sit here and just grieve myself to death?
Yes, that's good.
And I always find myself going back to that, saying, my brother wouldn't want me sitting here just crying or sobbing over the fact that he's no longer here. Because if we believe everything that we read in the Bible, and we believe everything about heaven and hell, and if you believe it, you know that place is fine.
Yeah.
Your loved one is okay.
Yeah.
But you gotta understand, you still have to live through it, and don't trick yourself mentally. I tell it, don't trick yourself mentally to thinking
That's good.
that because I sit here and the windows or the blinds are down, that I'm gonna wake up and I'm gonna wake up or go out and it's still gonna be dark. Now, as long as you walk in the face of this earth, there's gonna be light, and then there's gonna be darkness. But you have to come to realization with yourself that you want to live. And if you don't want to live, you're gonna die with it. But you gotta give yourself permission to say, I want to live through it, to get what's on the other side for you with it.
Yeah, so and to speak to that father who just walking in and they don't know how to open up, and they being more busier than they ever been before. As you was explaining, that was your cave, your work. Speak to that father who struggling with communication and don't know how to console their wife, because I dealt with it, not knowing how to communicate and express myself. So, speak to that, encourage that father that's watching that, maybe turn to some other things, maybe turn to alcohol, maybe turn to some other things. So speak to him about that, even though he's went through something tragic, that he's going to be greater than he was before it, because he's going to be stronger. So speak to that father.
First of all, I would say, from experience, don't try to mask it. Allow yourself to, feel it. Allow yourself to be vulnerable. Allow yourself to let it out. If you got to be if you're in front of a room full of people, you feel like crying, do it. There's no shame. That's the first thing I would say. Go ahead and grieve. Don't hold it in. You need help, ask for help. Don't be afraid. My thing, strong man. Nobody can see me cry. So that's the first thing I would do. As far as getting through it, you got to give it all to God at that point. Because no matter, you can replay it in your mind, you can replay the movie of the life 1,000,000 times, and the ending is still going to be the same that it was when you pressed the play button. So what you got to do is give it to God. Let him work it out. It's already his will. When earth was formed, when he formed earth, this day was coming. He knew this day was coming. He's the author of everything. So what you got to do, give it to him. Be there, be present for your spouse if you're married. Be present for your children, other children if you're the parent. If you're a sibling, be there for your brothers, sisters, and your parents. And I think if you can do all those things, you'll get through it and you'll come out better than you were. You won't doubt things. It won't be a lot of, I should have done this. Why didn't I do this? Why did God do this? And I think if you do all that, you'll come out okay.